Hey guys, how you doing? Been a while since we've talked about some Dragon Ball related stuff on this channel, hasn't it? Well, last night I partook in some Broly action, and we're going to talk about it today, so if you haven't seen this movie yet, I would highly recommend it, and I would also recommend that you turn off the video now because spoilers aplenty. Alright, this movie is awesome! If I was gonna rank it amidst the current Dragon Ball films, so like Battle of Gods, Resurrection F, I thought about going back and like trying to figure out a place to rank it amidst all the Dragon Ball films, but some of those, man, it's been a long time since I've seen. So just out of the three newest ones, Battle of Gods, Resurrection F, and Broly, I would go Resurrection of F on the bottom, then Broly, then Battle of Gods. Battle of Gods was just like this. You have to understand what Battle of Gods did. It like reinvigorated the entire damn franchise. You know, like, we would probably not have Super or the manga or anything right now if it wasn't for Battle of the Gods. That really just kick-started Dragon Ball back into high gear. But this movie definitely serves as a continuation of the story. It's very well done, and it also goes back and expands upon the lore of the invasion of the Saiyan race. You know, something that I always liked about early Dragon Ball Z was the focus on, like, the space opera. You know, they were focusing on, like, okay, you know, we did Dragon Ball, and that's sort of like, you know, Journey to the West, fantastical elements, magical dragon world. But then with Z, at the beginning of Z, it was like this transition where now we're moving more to like science fiction elements. And there were science fiction elements in Dragon Ball, like, you know, Red Ribbon androids and all that stuff, like Major Metallatron. Remember that dude? But I'm saying, like, okay, we have spaceships now, and we're traveling the cosmos, and we're going to other worlds, and we find out, like, the Bardock special, and we find out about how the Saiyans lived, and how they lived under Frieza and all that crap. And then, you know, after the whole Namek arc, that kind of just fizzled out. I mean, we still had the science fiction element with the androids, but like going to space and all that stuff, it was kind of weakened. And I always miss that part of early Z. I always miss that like Bardock special kind of feel. And the opening of this movie for like the first good 20 minutes focuses entirely on that. They focus on like the Saiyans getting the Scouters, and they're talking about the level of technology they had. Listen, man, I eat that shit up for breakfast. I love it. When freaking Frieza walks out and he's talking about the Scouters, and he's like, this much more superior technology to those battle scopes that you all use, and you get to see like the nursery pods that the Saiyans use to like cultivate their young. Well, their young are born the normal way, but it's like they use the nursery pods because Saiyans can't be caring for young. You know, they gotta be out there pillaging worlds and selling them off to the highest bidder. They talk about even the battle armor. They even talk about how the battle armor has like that elasticity to it. Now, all of this stuff has been talked about and referenced earlier on in Dragon Ball and in the supplemental material and the Daizenshus and all that stuff, but just the fact that they're bringing it to the forefront really helps you get immersed in this world, alright, and like the level of, you know, cosmic intrigue, I guess I should say, where we're focused on multiple planets, multiple worlds, space travel, all that stuff plays a really big role in this movie. So just by the feel of it, you know, like as soon as the opening scene happens and we have King Cold and Frieza landing on planet Vegeta 41 years ago, and we get to see what how their relationship with them really goes, and how Frieza became the ruler, and how the Frieza Force was born, and then talking about all the levels of technology they have. I was sold on this movie right away, okay? Oh, now, the other way that this movie really succeeds is Broly, of course, the eponymous character, and that's the key word here. Character! Broly is an actual freaking character in this movie. Now, you might say, isn't that a given? Well, go back and watch the original Broly trilogy, and you try to tell me if he's a damn character, because I think that's sort of up in the air. You know, I even mentioned this. I was in the theater, and when the ending credits were scrolling up, I met a fan in the theater, and we were sitting there watching the ending credits together, and I even brought it up to him. I'm like, you know, in the original Broly films, he was more of just a plot device, if anything. Like, the most that he could be considered a character was in the very first movie, Broly the Legendary Super Saiyan, but even then, he had zero motivation, or rather his motivation sucked. He had next to no personality, and he barely spoke. All right, he was really more of just like he's a plot device. He's this impenetrable, force that Goku and Vegeta and Gohan and Krillin and all the Z4 fighters have to go up against, and they just get beaten down over and over again. But beyond that first movie, which was pretty, I liked the first Broly movie. Just from the perspective of it just being this legendary Super Saiyan, and this is the first time we've gotten to see a Super Saiyan of this kind of level, somebody like Broly. That was cool. But, Second Coming and Bio Broly were absolute garbage, and they, once again, treated Broly more of just like a plot device. He's here, big, strong guy, Gohan has to fight against, and nothing more really beyond that. We're not going to go more into his character or elaborate on anything beyond that. So, in this movie, though, Broly is a character, and he is the main character of this film. Now, you'd figure that, considering the title of the film is Dragon Ball Super Broly, but no, seriously, Broly is the main focus here. Okay, if you were going into this movie and you were expecting like, oh, we're gonna get some big character development from Goku or Vegeta, or one of them is gonna get a new form, or even if you were thinking what I was thinking and Goku was gonna go Ultra Instinct in the 11th hour of the film to fight against Broly, none of that happens. We got some serious character development from Goku and Vegeta back in Battle of Gods and Resurrection of F, respectively. More on Goku's end of things in Battle of Gods, and more on Vegeta's end of things in Resurrection F. Because Frieza's back and all that shit. They're very prominent characters, and they are where they're at the end of Super, at the end of the Tournament of Power. The Tournament of Power just ended maybe a few weeks, maybe a month tops by the start of this movie. So their characters are more fresh in our minds, but Broly has to be reworked from the ground up. Okay, they really have to just revamp his story. They do keep elements of it from the original, as in Paragus. Paragus is still his father. King Vegeta in the original movie tried to have Broly killed, where in this one he just exiles him to a barren wasteland called Vampa, which is just filled with these horrible, like, giant ticks that'll just devour you. So Vegeta, King Vegeta, he's like, yeah, we're trying to get rid of him, but I'm not gonna. I think in the original he tried to have him stabbed to death. Like in this one, it was just like, all right, we're just gonna send him away so he's not a threat. So they do keep elements of it, but they build up Broly in a much better way. A perfect example of this, he's a lot more chattier than he is in the original. I was really worried that they were going to have him as more of just like a dumb caveman in this, just going by the trailer, I was like, I really hope they don't just have him like a, me Broly, me kill you, me devil. They don't do that. He's able to speak. He's even capable of things like, he's learned about manners and things from Paragus, because Paragus did still raise him while on Vampa. So he's capable of speech, and he's capable of actually, he's like, all right, well, let me tell you a story about my past. He's not very eloquent, but he gets the point across. You could tell he has emotions. You can tell there's way more to him than in the original trilogy. Okay. So, with that all being said, the first opening scene, like, we don't get to Goku and Vegeta until, like, a good half hour or so into the movie. Up until that point, it's just on Planet Vegeta and the backstory of all this stuff, and then we cut to Vampa, where we see Paragus and Broly and the opposition that exists on the planet, and then they find out that they're stuck there, and they're there growing up for the next, few decades, until we get to present day, right? As for the exact placement of the timeline, this movie really does feel like it's probably not going to be adapted into an arc in Super the same way that Battle of Gods and Resurrection of F had to be adapted into an arc. This is more of just like, watch Dragon Ball Super and then watch this movie, and then Dragon Ball Super, the animated, series will continue soon. So they're probably not going to adapt this into Super or anything, but if they were to do that, this Broly arc would not be very long. This movie does not feel like, the ending of this is not like a super cinematic finish where Broly has to be defeated, we're getting rid of you, Broly, boom, and then he's gone, and, it's some big climactic finale. Nothing like that. The ending of this movie really just set up things for what's going to happen later on in Super, alright, and I think that's the best way you could do it, really. Frieza, there's kind of a lighthearted overtone of this, where, like, in Battle of Gods, it's like Beerus has awakened and he's going to destroy the world. Resurrection of F, it's like Frieza's back for the first time in a long time and he's taking over Earth. This one has a little bit more of a lighthearted feel with Frieza. You can actually feel like Frieza, if there's anything more of character development, it's not from Goku and Vegeta, it's from the F-Dog. Because he's back in control of his fleet again after he's been resurrected. Like, keep in mind, after the whole thing on Namek, he was defeated, then he had to be rebuilt as a cyborg, then he tried to take revenge on Earth and was immediately killed by Trunks, and then he spent years and years in Earth's hell, then he was brought back again, Resurrection of F happened, he attained a greater form, but then he was immediately killed again. So you think, like, how many times does this have to happen to this guy before he finally gets the hint of, maybe I should try to do this a different angle? This is the movie where you at least start to get the impression of he's learning from his mistakes, all right? He's not trying to go and just conquer the Earth immediately. And this can be said. He is still trying to gather the Dragon Balls. He's a little bit smarter of how he does it this time, though. He doesn't just arrive on the Earth with his army, because he realizes, okay, all that's going to result in is my death. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send these two weaklings in my crew to go and grab the Dragon Balls, and then we find out what he wants to wish for. At first, I thought it was a complete joke, like he really did have something else planned, and he might have had something else planned, but this is what I mean by the lightheartedness of this, where we find out he just wants to use the Dragon Balls to wish himself taller. Alright, now, you could just say, like, okay, that's bullshit. He definitely was going to use them for something else, but we just never find out one way or the other. And one of his servants actually asks him, are you going to use it to wish for immortality? And even Goku and Vegeta are, after they find out that Frieza's trying to gather the Dragon Balls, he's like, what could he possibly wish for that Shenron could give him? Because he can't wish to be stronger. He's like, well, what about immortality? And Frieza, is like, okay, he has a brain now. He's like, wow, yeah, I'm not doing that, because I spent, it would seem like an eternity in Earth's hell. Immortality would do nothing but drive me insane. Which is the smart outlook here. Like, you do not want to live forever. At some point, you would just be driven to madness. Alright? And they throw out other ideas, like, what about, okay, not immortality, so to speak, but invulnerability, wishing for the ability to never get injured in battle. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's a good angle to take it. And Frieza's like, nah, because that wouldn't make fighting any fun if I couldn't get hurt, with the God sheet turned on. So then he just says, oh, I just want to be, 5 centimeters taller. I'm like, all right, fine. Well, let's just roll with that, okay? Like I said, because it takes place, like, immediately after the Tournament of Power, you really do feel like Frieza, after what happened in the tournament, how he had to team up with Goku, and how he got his life granted back to him by Whis and everything, you feel like Frieza just, like, he's like hurt by that, psychologically, and he wants a chance to like redeem himself as quickly as possible. So he tries to rebuild the Frieza Force. He sends out a bunch of scouting parties all over the universe trying to find, these great warriors somewhere. That's when these two servants of Frieza, Chi-Lai and Lemo, Lemon, it's a play on Lemon, they manage to find Broly and Paragus out on Vampa. Immediately after bringing them back. Like, Frieza does not take a lot of time to think about this. Like, as soon as they bring back Paragus and Broly, they're like, I am Paragus, and this is my son Broly, and he's really strong. And Frieza's like, okay, we're going to Earth, so you want to beat the crap out of a couple Saiyans for me? Yes, sir, we will do that. Especially because Paragus hates King Vegeta the Third, and his son Vegeta the Fourth is there, so he's like, yeah, we're gonna do that. So it didn't really seem like there's a lot of build-up or planning here. It's really like, Frieza just happens to be going to Earth anyway to get the Dragon Balls, and he just happens to run into Broly and Paragus, and they're like, alright, well, let's see what you're made of, Broly. And they land on the Earth, and the fight begins. And that's the rest of this movie, okay? Now, the fighting. The fighting of this, it first starts off with Broly and Vegeta, and then you have Broly and Goku, and then you have Broly and Goku and Vegeta, then you have Broly and Frieza briefly, which is mostly off-screen. That was kind of teased in the trailer, because the trailer just tried to get, at least the first one did, just try to get you like, okay, it's gonna be Broly versus Goku, Broly versus Vegeta, Broly versus Frieza. I'm like, alright, that last one, it's a little bit of a cop-out. We see some of it, but it's more or less used as just a time filler while Goku and Vegeta try to figure out the fusion dance, and they become the majestic Gogeta, who is you know right there, that was their selling point. These were all over the theater when you pick them up. Like this was the selling point. My man Gogeta's in this, not Vegito, Gogeta, who is the objectively better character. I dare you to claim otherwise, okay? So, few things to point out about the fights. They use the CG animation again, and I think it's definitely used more prominently than in Resurrection of F, because the fight is a lot longer than in Resurrection of F. I think the CG is, a step up better than Resurrection of F, where it was kind of looking like crappy PlayStation 2 graphics at times. This is a lot better. There are a few times where it's jarring when they're switching in and out between the 2D and the CG, but the great thing about this fight, and I'll tell you what it is straight up, is the fight feels like it's in real time. Alright, it really does feel like there's no, like, abuse of cinematic timing or anything like in the actual series. You know, like, Goku will be fighting against, Cell or Boo or somebody, and we'll stop everything for Goku to, Kame, and then we cut to around the battlefield and all over the earth, and everybody's watching Goku like, ha! May! And then we cut to King Kai's planet, and he's like, Goku, do it! Ha! You know, nothing like that. All of the key attacks, all of the punches, all of the kicks, the air choreography, all of that stuff really does feel like there's this camera that's just following Broly and Vegeta and Goku around, and you're just observing everything as it happens. Okay? With the exception of one scene where Goku and Vegeta leave to go and try to figure out the fusion dance for an hour, and he's like, well, they tried the fusion dance and they failed, so we gotta try again in 30 minutes. Cut back to Frieza getting the ever-loving snot beat out of him by Broly, like, boom, boom, boom. Cut back 30 minutes later. They try the fusion dance again. They fail a second time. So, well, gotta wait another 30 minutes. Cut back to Frieza. Boom, boom. And then we finally cut back the last time. So Frieza manages to hold off Broly for a solid hour. Or not really hold off as so much as just being like a chew toy. Frieza does get his licks in, but not as nearly as much as you'd probably want, okay? He's really more of just some filler, you know, because he has to be fighting somebody while Goku and Vegeta are trying to figure out how to... And you know what, though? I'm glad they included that, because, you know, even when I'm sitting there watching it, you know, because Vegeta, in the context of this timeline, he's never done the fusion dance before. All he has to go off of is what Trunks has told him about, you know, fusing with Goten to become Gotenks. That's all he has to go on. He knows that there's a dance involved, but he doesn't know the particulars of it or the exact, you know, how he has to lay out his body and how it has to be perfectly symmetrical and the angles have to be right. He doesn't know any of that stuff. So it doesn't make a lot of sense that they be able to get this on the first try. So I'm glad that they did that. When Piccolo started teaching them about the fusion dance and Goku's trying to guide him, I'm sitting there in the thing, I was like, there's no way that they could do that on the first try. But I would have been okay if they did, just to keep moving it along, because keep in mind, by the time that Vegeta and Goku are ready to fuse, we've already just been through the ringer of a fight. We've already had Broly Vegeta, Broly Goku, Broly Vegeta and Goku, Super Saiyan God Goku, Super Saiyan God Vegeta. It's always nice to see him sporting the crimson ginger hair. We've seen it before, I believe, in the anime and like a few episodes in the Tournament of Power and in the manga, but not nearly as many times. And then, of course, Blue Goku and Vegeta go up against them. So it's already after all of that, after they've exhausted all of their tricks and they're pretty winded. After we've just been watching that roller coaster of a fight, then we kind of put it on pause so we can go to the fusion dance, you know, like a seminar, basically, you know, with Piccolo. So I would have been okay if they just, fusion, first try, Gogeta, fine, whatever. But they don't do that, and I can respect that. We get to see some funny scenes with Frieza, and we also get, like, okay, it's realistic. Like, right, okay, fine, that's good. The fighting itself there were a few times where it gets a little bit overwhelming just because it's flying around so much. The cinematography, they like to do this one thing throughout the movie, and it wasn't just, during fight scenes. It was other parts of the movie too, where they really love to close up on characters' mouths. Like a character will yell something or just, you know, let out a battle cry, and the camera will just, that, or they'll go up to their eyes, like, that happens a lot in this movie. It happens a lot. I don't know why they decided to focus on that so much. I don't hate it. I don't like it. It's just something you point out after, watching the entire movie. It happens quite a bit. So there was a few times in the theater where I was just like, whoa, okay, whoa. Just need to stare at the floor for a second here. I'm not saying I'm motion sick from it. Maybe some people could have, if you're susceptible to that kind of stuff. But it does get wild, and a few times where it gets kind of crazy. You can't really see what's going on. Gets a little bit disorienting. But the big moments, like the moment where Broly summons like this giant death ball, and they're fighting in the Arctic, and then after this big attack, the Arctic just get obliterated, and then the magma just comes underneath from like the Earth's crust, and it begins anew in this like lava-filled hellscape. There's literally a scene in this movie where they just straight up break reality, and it's never referenced. It's just when Gogeta and Broly start fighting, it's just like the whole thing shatters, and the background goes all psychedelic, and Gogeta he has like one line where he's like, what the hell? Whatever. And they just keep fighting. And I love that they did that. I was confused, but I like that they did that because it's like a battle of this magnitude would have the potential to like literally shatter reality. The same thing that would happen with Boo when he was trapped in the hyperbolic time chamber. He just yelled loud enough and it just broke a hole in reality and he was able to walk through. This battle is definitely on that level at this point. So yeah, just roll with it. Okay, so I focused a lot on Gogeta so far. I want to go back to the fusion dance and shit in a second here, but I want to talk about Broly and exactly what his form is, okay? Because it's not... For most of this fight, up until really the end part here, when it's Gogeta versus Broly, for most of this fight, Broly's overall appearance doesn't change much. His hair doesn't change color. It just stands up, and he just gets this ominous greenish aura coming off of him, and that's how he fights for most of this, and he just learns how to fight as he goes about it. The fight starts off with Vegeta pretty much just kicking his ass. Broly starts to pick up on some things. Vegeta goes Super Saiyan. Broly picks up on some more things. Vegeta goes God, and you can see how this is going and just escalating here. I've read this, and it just from just people have already seen the movie. I saw some people talking about this, that Broly is going to be the introduction of Super Saiyan 4 into the canon of the story. Okay, because the way that it's implied, and there's only like one line by Paragus, it was explained earlier in the film that Broly had to have his tail removed by Paragus while they were on Vampa. Vampa is like this desolate planetoid, but it has a giant moon, like super close to it. So it wouldn't have taken very long for Broly to look up at this giant moon that takes up most of the sky and turn into Ozaru, right? So, understandably, Paragus removed his tail. Later on in the movie, when he starts fighting against Vegeta and Goku, he starts to unlock this power and go through this transformation that's not really a transformation, but it's a transformation. And Paragus hypothesizes that it must be because he's channeling the power of the Ozaru form into human form. So he still maintains the strength, just he also has his agility and everything, except he's losing his reason. That's the drawback. So from that line right there, I think we can discern that if this form, he gets to a point where it's basically the legendary Super Saiyan, the same as it was in the original, the green hair, and his pupils literally shatter. Like, there's a scene where we zoom in on the eyes again, his pupils literally like shatter and break like glass, and then his eyes are just whited out, and then he goes into that form. But there seems to be an inclination here, like, there's also a connection to the Ozaru transformation, the Great Ape. They even talk about the Great Ape, during the beginning of the movie when we're in the flashback, when Paragus and this other random Saiyan are exploring Vampa, and they're talking about the transformation and what it entails and when you should use it and all that stuff. And it's been a long time since we've referenced this, So yeah, I am perfectly fine with Super Saiyan 4 being part of the canon of the story. I don't think really anybody hates on Super Saiyan 4. When you compare it aesthetically to Super Saiyan God Blue or Super Saiyan God or even Ultra Instinct, the appearance of 4 always was unique. It was, you can really tell, like, they put some serious, like, all right, let's not do just the same thing we did before, like make their hair a different color or make it longer. Let's really do something different with this, with 4. If there was anything that you would excuse GT for, it would be definitely like the design of Super Saiyan 4. If you were gonna pick one thing out of all of GT and say that was the best thing that ever came out of this series, that would probably be Super Saiyan 4. I also kind of like the design of the Shadow Dragons, but Super Saiyan 4 would definitely take the cake on that one, right? Okay, so I'm fine with that, and like I said, the movie ends on a cliffhanger where Goku is going to just continually come back to Vampa and train with Broly, and, you know, he even alludes to, like, maybe Broly is stronger than Beerus, because Beerus doesn't really do a lot of stuff, so I'm, you know, okay, fine, I'll roll with that, I'll go with that. So yeah, I'd be fine with that being an introduction to this. Okay, so one other thing about the movie that I didn't even notice, and this might be a negative to some people, the supporting cast of Dragon Ball Super and Z, has really no screen time in this movie. Gohan, Krillin, 18, 17, King Kai, Dende, they don't appear. They don't appear at all in this movie, except for, like, there was a very brief flashback transition when we cut from the past with the Saiyans to present day. We just have this really brief, like, flashover where we see all these scenes from Dragon Ball and Z and Super up until now, but that's the only time you'll see them. Except for Piccolo. Piccolo appears more as a cameo in this movie, if anything. It's like well over halfway into the movie when Goku is just lying on the ground having the crap beat out of him by Broly. He's in Super Saiyan God mode at this point, and he just can't, he can't win. And Piccolo communicates it with him telepathically and, like, hey Goku, what the hell is going on down there? And Goku's like, she's pretty strong. And Piccolo's like, yeah, well, I don't think I'd help, but I don't think I could really do anything. And eventually eventually Goku teleports to Piccolo with Vegeta, and they do the fusion dance, and then Gogeta happens, right? But that's all Piccolo is there for. It wasn't until that point in the movie when I realized, like, whoa, that's right, Piccolo exists, and all those other characters existed. But like I said, the way and the flow of the fight and how it's so in real time, it makes sense why we're not, like, cutting away. This movie doesn't take place over, like, you know, a period of several days or anything. It's like literally Goku and Vegeta chilling out on Bulma's island. Frieza arrives with Broly. They go and fight him. Takes a few hours. Then they're done. All right, that's really what this is. Bulma does appear. You know, she's kind of in the background. Whis is there. Beerus is once again more of a cameo than anything. He appears at the very beginning. We get a cute scene of him and Bola, and then he's done. We don't get to see Beerus again until the very, very end. Whis has one moment where, when Gogeta arrives on the battlefield, he's talking to Frieza. Well, who's fighting Broly while they're talking to each other? It's Whis. Broly is just, like, flailing his arms trying to attack Whis, and of course Whis is just dodging him like, oh, those are some good shots. Oh, you missed me. Oh, you missed me again. You know, it does lend a little bit of the same thing that happened in Resurrection of F, where here's Frieza with his entire army, and Frieza has this new form, but Beerus and Whis are, like, right there on the sidelines. You know, if Beerus really wanted to, he could just, and then game over, right? So, and then by the time Goku and Vegeta get to the battlefield in Resurrection of F, they're already stronger than Frieza together, so it doesn't even matter, right? So, you know, it's a little bit of that where it's like, Whis is there. Whis could just, you know, wipe out Broly, but it's not the exact same thing, though, because in Resurrection of F, Frieza was still very much the villain. All right, well, I mean, he's not a good guy, but, you know, he's still very much the villain of that movie. And when Beerus could just poof and then eliminate the villain like that, not a big deal. Broly is not a villain in this. He's the antagonist, sure, but he's not the villain. All right, you don't want to see Broly just get killed at the end of this film. You don't want to see that. You don't want to see Beerus show up and be like, "You're disturbing my nap, Haka." You don't want to see that. You want to see Broly get out of this, and he does. And part of that is with his backstory, talking to Chilai and Lemo about growing up on the planet and the way Paragus treated him, and he had a shot caller on him, and he had a friend named Ba, who was this giant monster. It was the only friend he ever had growing up. You know, this kind of backstory is not really intricate. It's not original or anything, but it works. You know, it works for Broly. Broly does not need to have this really convoluted backstory that needs to be overly complicated. He just needs to have a little bit more of a better backstory than Kakarot cried next to me a lot in my nursery. That's why I hate him so damn much. And that doesn't exist in this movie. Broly does not have this just visceral genetic hate for Goku. It exists because Paragus raised him to fight and listen to whatever he said. So when Paragus says, fight against those two Saiyans, Broly, like, rages out and does what his father tells him to do, because that's how he was raised, right? But it's not this, like, genetic, like, he's like, I hate Kakarot because he cried a lot. You know, nothing like that. Like, he doesn't go screaming, Kakarot! They even make fun of that. They even make fun of that at the end of the movie, when the last line of the movie, when Goku arrives on Vampa, and once again, going more into like just like the technical aspects of all this, like they're living on this barren wasteland. How are they going to have supplies? Chie and Lemo arrive, and they have some supplies. It's like, oh man, we can't survive long on this. That's when Goku shows up, and he's like, oh, I can teleport here whenever. Here are some capsules. Here's some water. Blah blah blah. I'll bring your guys supplies every now and then later, and I'll spar with you, Broly. And the last line is, you know, oh, I'm Goku, but you could just call me Kakarot. Zip, end credits. Beautiful, standing ovation. Everybody loved it. So yeah. I just like little things like that. Just really like just tickle my fancy when they're talking about like the supply provisions on Vampa. Probably not very interesting to you. Very interesting to me. I like that. And they end it with Broly on Goku on good terms. That's beautiful. It's like, yes, he's the big super buff legendary Super Saiyan OMG, but that doesn't mean he has to be the villain. That doesn't mean that. It just means, like, he and Goku can be on good terms. They don't have to be besties, but they can be on good terms, and they end it with that. They end with, like, Goku being like, hey, Broly, I'm gonna stop by every once in a while, have a sparring match with you. You're pretty strong. And Broly's just like, okay. Paragus dies, and Paragus's death is a joke. It is a straight up joke. It is literally Frieza watching Broly starting to lose against Vegeta and Goku once they team up, and he just looks over at Paragus. He has a brief flashback to when he killed Krillin and Goku powered up. He literally just zip kills Paragus and is like, oh my god, Broly, look at your father! And then he goes Legendary Super Saiyan. That's how he does it. That's how he goes into it. It's almost like Frieza's watching the film with us, and he's like, oh man, there's only like 30 minutes left in this, and he hasn't gone legendary yet. Zip! Go legendary, Broly! And then that's what happens. But, you know, considering all the crap Paragus pulled and the way he raised Broly and the shit, we find out that he maimed one of Broly's friends, like the giant monster, which is why he has like the green pelt around him. He like shot off one of its ears because like, you're not allowed to be having friends with this monster. You have to trade. You know, so just that alone gives it like, okay, Paragus is a dick bag, so just kill him. So that was fine. I'm not even gonna say like that was like, oh, they do not treat this character with the death he deserves. Like that is the death that Paragus deserves. I'm sorry, that's what it is there. But the movie wraps up in just a very quick way where Broly gets wished away by Chilai and Lemo, and there's like, well, just save Broly. They summon Shenron, they gather all the Dragon Balls that Frieza had, and they just teleport Broly back to Vampa. I was thinking about how they were going to make the wish, you know, was the wish going to be like, because they can't wish that Broly is stronger than Vegeta or anything, like, they can't do that, but I was thinking, like, maybe they were going to make a wish, because they know about Broly's backstory. I was thinking maybe they were going to make a wish that, like, I want you to have made it so Paragus never attacked Broly's childhood friend, or that Broly stayed friends with the monster, or Broly was freed from the control of his father psychologically. I was wondering if they were going to do kind of a wish like that, but they just did a really simple thing, which I think is the safest way to go about it. Just teleport Broly back to Vampa. Just do that. And let's like, okay, we'll do that. Fine. So I like that. Chilai and Lemon, by the way, great supporting cast in this movie. It also helps that Lemon is voiced by Bruce Carey, who plays Silver's Rayleigh in the Funimation dub of One Piece. So I'm just thinking like fucking Rayleigh's chilling out with Broly the entire film. Chilai is this young woman who's like a green-skinned alien that's part of the Frieza Force. She's a little bit fan servicey in the movie. There's a scene where she's showing Broly her armor, like how elastic it is, so she has her boobs sticking out, and she just kind of like whoop, and then plop. And there's a scene or two where they kind of focus on her butt, you know. There's a scene where Lemon's talking in the background, but you just see like Chilai's butt just, you know, as she's watching Broly fight in the foreground, and I'm like, okay, I see what they're doing. So she's like the fan servicey character, but they're really good characters. And at the end, they have some great lines with Goku. There's a line where Chilai's like, okay, I haven't basically understood a single word you said the entire time you've been here, to Goku, but that's some great lines there. So they were good characters. I hope they appear later on in the installments. How is this movie going to tie back into Super? Because if you've been reading the Super manga, they are going on a completely different track right now than Broly. I'm not going to explain that because that's not what this video is about. But I do believe it takes place after this. I believe like in between the Tournament of Power and the new arc in the manga, they had a quick little insert that was like, after the Tournament of Power, Broly! But then we just cut over to this. Now, that was kind of like, well, you know, like, oh, so Goku and Vegeta, we know they're going to come out of their fight with Broly in One Piece. That's like a spoiler for that, but like, come on, we all knew that was going to happen. He was like, I'm sure that Broly was going to severely maim Vegeta in this movie. Like, that wasn't going to happen there. So they play it safe with that, where it's like, it is a big event, it's Broly, but in terms of like the grand scheme, like we don't get the gods involved in this movie. We don't get the other universes involved. Jiren doesn't show up or anything like that. We don't get anything like that. It's really just like this really strong dude shows up, Goku and Vegeta fight against him, they have a new ally, Frieza decides, I'm gonna come back later, he leaves, that's it. Alright, that's the way that the level of, it's not a super, like, universal level threat here in the movie, okay? So, yeah. We're probably going to just go right into the new arc of the manga in the next anime arc. When the anime does return, we're probably just going to skip to that arc. They're probably going to, I would assume, maybe play some clips from the movie, recap it really briefly. But I hope they stay with it. I hope they don't just ignore Broly. I hope that, like, you know, we see Goku periodically going back to Vampa to train with Broly, and maybe brings Vegeta to train with him as well. Although that might be a little tough, because Paragus literally conditioned Broly his entire life, like, you know, hate Vegeta, hate Vegeta. Meanwhile, Paragus and Broly, while they were on Vampa, they had no idea about Kakarot or Goku or anything like about him. One more thing before I go. I can't believe I forgot to mention. We get to see Bardock in this movie. Now, once again, Bardock, not the focus of it, but I just love how they treated the backstory of the Saiyans in such an emotional and serious light. They did not treat it, they didn't just gloss over it really quick. Like, they could have made it like a 5-minute prologue of the movie. Like, Frieza shows up and obliterates Planet Vegeta and that's it. No, they treat it with weight. They give like just personalities and speaking roles to just random Saiyans in the background. We get to see Nappa, we get to see Raditz. It really does feel like, yeah, like these characters, they, what's the best way for me to put this? Like everything about the Dragon Ball lore that has been built up to at this point is referenced in the beginning of this movie. Like, Bardock gets back home to his wife, Jine, and he mentions, how's Raditz doing? Like, I mean, you could have left Raditz. No one gives a shit about Raditz, but it's nice that you mentioned him. It's nice that we get to see him as a kid with Vegeta. It's nice that you reference that, you know? This movie would have been perfectly fine without referencing Raditz or without going into detail with the scouter technology. But you did that, and I love it. And then, of course, you have Bardock just basically sending Goku away to Earth, and it's the beautiful scene where him and Jine are just looking up at the stars, and this really emotional soundtrack's playing in the background is great. And then the soundtrack with the fighting, and this is going to be the last thing I'm going to talk about. Oh, there's so much about this movie. The soundtrack when they're fighting, at first it took a little bit of getting used to. It's different from, like, coming off of the Tournament of Power, where they just amped up Ultimate Battle, you know, like, which is an amazing soundtrack, you know, that went with Goku fighting Jiren and just hulking out and all that stuff. I was hoping they were going to have a rendition of Ultimate Battle in this. It's a different kind of soundtrack where when Goku and Vegeta are fighting Broly, it's like this chanting in the background, just like this constantly like monks chanting or something. So you have to kind of get used to it. It's different from what you're used to, but it works. And then when Gogeta shows up, I mean, like, literally, I think the soundtrack, the chorus was just Cheetah, 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 Cheetah. It's like just like a factory siren, but instead of just like a it's just Gogeta, Gogeta, Gogeta. Not my favorite soundtrack. I might have to listen to it a few more times and see what I think about it. But it works for the fight. It doesn't take you out of it or anything. It's just like different from the backing tracks we heard in Super during the Tournament of Power, right? So, but with that all being said, I think that's everything I wanted to cover about the movie. There's no Yamcha, unfortunately, but you just take what you can get. I think the next movie is going to heavily focus on our boy Yamcha, so we'll cut back to that. I don't know when the anime is going to resume. I don't know how that's going to go about it. The manga itself is only like 2 chapters into the new arc, which I'm thinking they might have held back the newest chapter because they wanted Broly to be released and then the new chapter comes out. But yeah, definitely would recommend it if you're a Dragon Ball fan. I liked it better than Resurrection of F. Yeah, it's not a lot of things to say really negative about this film, considering that, like, now if this was a film that was like, Super is over and this is the thing that's going to cap it all off, I would have a few more negative things to say about that, but you really can't say that because that's not what this is. This is just like the break in between like the first half of Super and the second half of Super, if you want to say it like that. So, and in that regard, it does phenomenal. So, thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed Broly. Tekking101 signing out.